All right, it's a couple minutes past the 11:30 Central Time mark. My name's Bond, Roth President, Financial Advisor here with Stenger Family Office. And if you haven't heard it before, we'll say it again. For the past 42 long years, it's been our mission to deliver both clarity and confidence to help secure your financial future. Thanks for joining us, everybody. This is the BP 5-step retirement process webinar. I can't believe it's already, I can't believe November is almost here. Thanksgiving's coming up around the corner. Just want to highlight a future event coming up. We have Investor Day. So that's our big annual event. Investor Day is coming up in 2 weeks on the 14th and the 15th, downtown Naperville. We have some great speakers coming from Strive Asset Management, First Trust, and Nick's going to give a great keynote. We're going to have a nice little financial family office panel as well, and just giving a little update on our due diligence process, meeting with 25 third-party asset managers over the last couple months. So just want to give you a little heads up for that. You should see it in the mail if you're on our little list there, or even an email from Nick. But it's our Investor Day on the 14th and 15th. Now we'll keep things pretty tight for you today. In the past, these webinars on the retirement side have been closer to that 45-minute mark. I'm going to keep it under 20. So things will be pretty a pretty broad view. We can get really customized, of course. If you ever like to book a one-on-one meeting with myself or my partner, Nick Stenger, I see some folks on the call have been talking to us already and work with us. So it's great seeing you on the call today. But again, we'll kind of just get diving in today's content. So just a little bit about our firm before we get started. We are not just a financial planning firm, not just an investment management firm. As a fiduciary independent firm, we also have in-house taxes for preparation and more proactive approach on the planning side. And then also we have estate planning strategy. So an in-house tax team, in-house estate planning team through Legacy Life and Law. And then big time too, we're really big on this is next generation support. So we're all about helping the next generation. So it's so cool seeing this. Back in 2020, I believe, if I'm getting the year right, we had our fourth generation family sign up. So original great grandparents, I guess, would be in the early 80s. The kids, the grandkids, and now even great grandkids signing up. So it's so cool to walk through time with folks, 2, 3, and even now 4 generations deep. So like we said earlier, 42 years, we've been working with oil and gas families, started in the 80s at the Mobile Refinery over here in Joliet, Illinois. We're licensed in nearly all 50 states. Today, we're really going to focus on the BP 5-step retirement process. With that, you can always get complimentary fidelity advice. So that's on the ESIP plan. We can always also do an extensive analysis on your NUAs, pensions, RSUs, Social Security, kind of help guide you and walk you through the steps leading up to and throughout retirement. So 42 years. Taking the next step, all that will look like after today's call is you could schedule a one-on-one meeting with a Stenger financial advisor. So me or my partner, Nick Stenger. Minimum starter account. Don't know if I said this before, but the minimum account balance we do to start an official relationship with our folks at BP is just $1,000. So $1,000 investment account, get your relationship started, financial planning process, and that way you really have a nice little benchmark. You can really see how we do and over the next couple of years before your retirement. So give us a little test run with the $1,000 start account, and then we can always, of course, customize advice for the ESIP plan. At the end of the call, there will be a nice little survey at the end. Please give us feedback. Really, really help us out on that front. You can request the BP guidebook. That's something we do every year. So that 2023 version is still there. And then a nice little benchmarking survey. So we get this question all the time from our folks with oil, gas, including BP, is how am I doing compared to my peers? So this little survey gives you access to that. So it gives you a nice little benchmarking survey for people in your industry. Just jump along to the content, the 5 steps, kind of in the title, right? But the 5 steps, we'll go through them all, but identify your DOS, the DOS, comprehensive financial planning, investment management, Social Security and healthcare, and then, of course, taxes and estate planning. Those are the 5 steps that we're going to cover today, and we'll just kind of go through one by one. The first one, Identify your DOS. So this is something we've been doing since the 80s. I think it's probably the most important thing, the most helpful thing that people have really started the conversation and really help guide them into what they're really looking to forward to, right? In retirement, but also in the short term too. So the D stands for dangers, right? So what are you afraid of losing? So that's your dangers, opportunities. What are you looking forward to? Like in retirement, work optional lifestyle even. Are you looking to take some more trips overseas, stay at home in the United States, spend more time with family, friends, get a boat? Those are something you're looking forward to. And then what makes you confident? So your strengths. So a lot of times strengths that we see are, hard earning savings, the nice little nest egg folks have for retirement. That's on the financial side. But then also strengths just depends on, your family, your community that you have around you, your faith, your values, the hard work that you're passing down from generation to generation. So that's right there, the DOS. That's really important. Step 2, financial planning. This is, it really addresses the key question. And do I have enough investments to produce enough income throughout my retirement? And if you're married, do you have enough assets to produce enough income throughout both your lifetime? So that's a big thing, especially, of course, if there's 2 of you. But your income, as you know, it's really fixed when you're retired. So we'll just give you a little example, but the income is the central problem. But when you look at financial planning, you look at income, expenses, assets, and liability. When you look at the income, just for example, it's really important to just calculate the retirement income gap. So let's just take this as an easy example. When you're working, you're making, about 10 grand a month. And then of course, your expenses around 7,500 bucks. And then when you're retired, your income, is the big question mark. That's the income gap. And then your expenses are about that $7,500 mark. So that's what we're really planning for. So how do you really look and fill that income gap? The main sources, of course, start with social, pensions, retirement, rental income coming from any investment properties, maybe any other income on the investment side. But the big thing too, at the very end, to fill in the gap is that investment income. So really think about from your pension, if you do the lump sum, if that's what you decide to do, that's what a lot of folks at BP end up doing at retirement. And then also with the ESIP plan. So your 401k over Fidelity kind of helps fill the gap too, in addition, of course, to taxable accounts and stuff like that. Investment income, it really comes from dividends, interest, and those retirement distributions. So we'll go over the new rules, of course, with the Secure Act and all the new RMD rules that are constantly changing. But those are some of the ways to derive income on the investment side. Filling in the gap. So kind of looking back at that same example, you're looking at that monthly amount. You need that $7,500. Social's covering, let's just say $3,500. The pension, if you do the monthly, or if you have a pension from another company, that's $1,000. So that's where the income cap's needed. You need $4,000. So that's where you're really coming in on that example, and that's where you need to get from either your lump sum or your investments. Do I have enough to retire? The big question, right? And really, you kind of have to look at the 4% rule. I know that's a pretty basic benchmark, but there's a lot of misconceptions out there about the 4% retirement rule. And a lot of folks say, oh, 4% on the balance that I ended the previous year. But in fact, what you really should look at, I'm sorry, I have something in my throat too, but something you should really be looking at is how much you started out with. So let's just say you started $1 million, and this is your first 10 years in retirement. If you can see that little slide deck there. So you started $1 million, take out the 4%. So keep it easy. That's 40 grand a year. And then you have your ending balance at the very end of that column, ending balance. So looking back on 2, you're not looking back at your starting balance, but you're really taking that 4%, just inflating it with the inflation cost from the original 1 million. But it's pretty cool. I mean, we've been doing this for 42 years. Me, obviously not for 42 years myself, but the group has been around for 42 years helping gas and oil folks and BP families. And it's so cool to see and hear, and not just hear, but physically see in the accounts that all of our family, for the most part, most of our families will start with an X amount of dollars, right? And even after all the spending they do and gifting and stuff like that during their lifetime, 30, 35 years later, they still have about the same amount in their account. And that's just from, the customized approach on the investment side. And of course, not spending more than they make. But that's just been really cool to see, people having about just as much as they had at retirement 35 years later. Assets, this is part of that financial planning part we talked about. So really, what does that look like? Look at two sides of the equation for the most part. You want to have a nice little balanced approach. You want to have qualified assets and non-qualified. So qualified, of course, being like the 401k, 403bs for you would be the ESIP plan. The pensions, that'll be the lump sum in case you have any IRAs, stuff like that. That's qualified money. So that's pre-tax dollars. Or even Roth IRAs, of course, which is after tax. But then the non-qualified accounts, so those non-retirement accounts, that's somewhere too you really want to try to build up before retirement to have during your first couple of years, especially. You can do that through brokerage accounts, real estate, savings and checkings, of course, so cash, money market, treasury portfolios, and of course, business accounts. But two big ages, we want you to remember here as you're kind of thinking about financial planning and retirement is 59 and a half. So that's a big number people hear about all the time. Oh, 59 and a half. What does that mean? That means that once you hit 59 and a half, you can withdraw from your 401k, your IRAs, that qualified money without incurring that 10% penalty. There's also the age to 73. So most of our folks, you have the RMD, if you haven't taken already, your RMD, your required minimum distribution, the amount the IRS is going to force you to take out every year, depending on the balance of the previous December. That's just something you have to look at too, starting at age 73 for most folks retiring going forward. There's always exceptions to the rules. The two big ones, of course, is the rule of 55. Since a lot of folks that we work with and what we've seen over the years, especially at BP, will retire before 59 and a half, what you can do is you can actually take out distributions from the 401k without that 10% penalty. So from the ESIP plan, you leave it with Fidelity from 50, a decent amount of it from 55, 59 and a half, and that's your little gap time. And you can take money out of the retirement plan at work at BP with Fidelity without incurring that 10% penalty. And then, of course, starting in 2033. So some folks on the line here in 2033, that's when you'll be starting the RMD process at age 75. Sorry. Looking at the financial planning side too, we talked about assets, income, liabilities. That's the other part of the equation. So this is sometimes a danger for some folks. A lot of folks at BP, we notice it's not a big danger. A lot of our BP families have done very well living within their means and saving. So that's not a big issue we see all too often, but liabilities is part of the equation. So good debt, you could think mortgages, business loans, and of course the bad debt, high interest rate stuff that can really hurt folks, especially right as you approach retirement. Credit cards, car loans, installment loans, anything on that front. We really want to try to get that paid off as soon as possible before retirement when you have those fixed expenses. So something we do with the financial planning side of things in step 2 is we build you a written financial plan through Right Capital. So that's the financial software system that we use. We interviewed a bunch of different systems and softwares when we launched our firm this spring, but let me tell you, it's incredible. So you'll even see a little snapshot like this. That's just one of the 120 pages you can have, but it gives you a nice little snapshot of your general assets, liabilities on that front. So it's pretty cool. You see the total net worth, the different types of accounts, and it just gives you a nice little viewpoint. It can go much more detailed than that, but that's one thing we can do for you. If you schedule like a no cost, no obligation meeting, we can always do a written financial plan for you. Step 3 in the BP process, investment management. So really matching your goals with your investment portfolio and really not the other way around. And we see this time and time again where people are in cookie cutter portfolios. And this kind of goes back to number 2, but cookie cutter portfolios just not taking the correct approach. So we want to match your goals with your investment portfolio. So maybe be long, short, or medium. We'll get into that in a second. but we really want to customize it. Like I said, don't want to be cookie cutter, don't want to be in target date. You don't want to be working with someone who's just outsourcing the investment management. That's what we do in-house is, we're making the decisions. We customize it for our families in accordance to your plan. So taking the appropriate amount of risk for the return you need throughout your lifetimes. And the transparent fee structure. So that's how we work. We're a fee-only business, no commissions, no brokerage. We dropped all those licenses earlier this year after 42 years at our previous broker-dealer when we created our fiduciary independent model here. So typically, getting started, let's just say with $1,000 account, most folks start at that 1% part mark. And then, it can always go down from there. The bucket strategy, this is what I mentioned a few minutes ago: long, short, and medium goals. And sorry about that. The bucket strategy, and this is something that's really cool. I love this saying. Ron, Stenger, and Nick, introduced it to me a number of years ago. And this is all about begin with the end in mind. And a lot of times people have, and Nick will always say this, people sometimes have that closed vision, where they're kind of just looking at the next, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. But really, you have to keep the end in mind. And your retirement, let's just say 55, that's just the beginning, right? So hopefully you have 30, 40 years of retirement. So we have to keep the end in mind, and that is not running out of money. That's the biggest risk we see. So how do we invest for that? So examples, we want to invest for retirement, long-term care, healthcare expenses. So that portion of the bucket of the strategy, we want to be in more, let's just call it aggressive. And individual stocks, high quality US companies, that's the way you want to be invested for that. So use your IRAs and other tax advantaged accounts. Your mid to, and then your short-term goal. So we want to think long-term, and then we want to think short-term. So short-term, think more so on the lines of, the next 6 months, 2-3 years. So short term being like, oh, I have some big expenses coming up. We're going to go on some trip, our emergency fund. So we want that to be very, very conservative. So we're not looking to, make money, right? Not looking to make gains, but just keeping that money safe and secure for you. So for instance, money markets, high quality treasuries, in addition to just plain old cash. So just want to make sure you're getting some interest on that right now while you can. Last but not least, that mid-tier bucket, and this is the harder one sometimes, but think of like some bigger trips, weddings, large purchases. Those are some big ones too. Those we really want to be allocated a little bit more moderately. So we want to take on a little risk, but not as much as those long-term goals. So use after-tax accounts for this. So think trust, brokerage accounts, bank accounts, stuff like that. But again, we do want to take that similar approach where we want to be invested in our mind in high quality US companies, but just not as much, not as aggressive as those longer term goals. Step 4, Social Security and healthcare. What age to take Social Security at? That is a great question. We get this question all the time. We see the mistake time and time again. People like to take it at 62. They just do. They like to get it started. That's not our advice. Of course, every situation is different. So for some people, it does make sense. But for the most part, we don't think it makes sense taking it at 62 at the very earliest stage. For most people, that's just, generally, because you have that 13-year break even with Social, as most of you know. So 66 to 67, that full retirement age, that's where a number of people take it. So just depending on your plan, we typically see people do the 60, full retirement age or up to 70. And the 70 is where you can get that max benefit. For those who don't know, don't wait past 70. There's no point. You can't get any more than you would at 70. So we definitely want to take it at 70 at the very latest. Healthcare, that's something too, of course, we can talk about with the plan, but healthcare, there's so many options out there after retirement, after your BP healthcare kind of expires, once that does, but there are parts A through Z. So you can literally spend hours and hours and hours and hours looking into this, and there's specialists for this, and we can connect you with folks that literally that's their job is healthcare, Medicare. But the 4 major ones to really look at is part A, B, C, and D. And they make it easy, right? A, B, C, D, like the first ones to think about. But The hospital insurance, Part A, that's automatic enrollment. Part B is the doctor insurance. So that's just something to look into because you're not auto-enrolled. Part C, that one's a little bit pricier. It does cost more, but it just has better coverage for the most part. So that's what we see a lot of our families choose later in life, just because it has a lot more coverage. And then, of course, Part D, that's for prescription drug coverage. So that's the big thing. When you look at when to start planning for social, you know, it says it right here, but can apply 4 months before the benefit date. Medicare, usually 3 months before turning 65. That's the big date right there for Medicare that a lot of people remember, 3 months before. Social Security, that's the part where we can really help you with the financial plan. So we can show you all the different scenarios, let's say 62, 63, 67 for retirement age, and even age 70. And we can do analysis and really show you, how long you'd have to make for the break even too, but what's going to give you the best benefit long term based on your plan. So that's something we can do for you. Just schedule a meeting with me or Nick, and we can do that. The Medicare, of course, we can get you connected with a great third-party consultation. Last but not least, the fun stuff, taxes during retirement and estate planning basics. Now, this is one of the big reasons why we created Stenger Family Office. And I'll kind of just start with taxes to begin with. Sorry. Stenger Family Office, we created it not just because we wanted to be a fiduciary investment firm. That should just be baseline, right? Your advisor should be a fiduciary and be able to say that in writing. So that's number one. But number two, we wanted to bring your entire team in one place. So we wanted to bring the tax person in-house to make sure that you're just not preparing your taxes correctly like you should every year, but really strategize and being proactive for retirement. So taxes during retirement, again, we offer in-house strategy and preparation, but brokerage account and RMD, so that's the required minimum distribution, 72, 73 years old, 75, depending on when you're going to retire and your birthday. RDD, that's the required death distribution. That's changed a lot since the Secure Act post-COVID. So of course, it used to be over the beneficiary's lifetime. So it used to be like 10, 30 years, and then the account would be depleted, the inherited IRA. Now they're saying within 10. So there's been a lot of talk. So you didn't have to take any in 2020, nothing 2021, nothing 2022, nothing in 2023. So we're still, waiting and to see what they'll say for 2024, but at least that 10-year time frame is what you have. So that's very, very important to make sure you're on track, to make sure you're not going to pay Uncle Sam more than you should with those required distributions with an inherited IRA, especially since 2020. Roth IRA planning, we get that a lot with Roth conversions and stuff like that. That's something that's very specific. That's used as a sales tactic at a lot of firms. That's not for everybody. Definitely want to have a conversation with your advisor and with your CPA to make sure it makes sense for you long term. Charitable giving, that's a big thing too to think about. And then other general tax tips. That's everything we can do for you right here with our CPA. He's head of tax. Chris Jordan, he's also a master in tax. He's great. So you can always reach out to him directly and find him on our website there. Wills and trusts, this is kind of just like the basics of retirement planning. Wills and trusts, there's pros and cons to both. What I'll tell you is the easy way to think of a will versus a trust is with a will, you have less control and it's less expensive, right? So that's what a lot of people do early in their lifetime, in their careers. But trust, yes, it costs a little bit more, but you have much more control and there's privacy too. So that's big. And that just allows you to put guardrails and allows you to really control how your money is distributed to and when after you're gone. So we see more and more folks these days doing the trust, puts more guardrails, allows the money to stay within the family, within the bloodlines, with a lot more guardrails than just a typical will. So that's just something you should think about. Talk to an attorney. We have one in-house too, Brandon Ayers with Legacy Life and Law. You can always do that here with us if you'd like, but really I would consider a trust for most families just to at least think about and talk to an attorney to see if it makes sense. Something that's not in here too, outside of power of attorney, medical directives, if something ever happened to you, incapacitated, there's something in writing to make sure your will is done, if that happens. But some of you may want to consider a corporate trust. That's something I didn't put in here, but a corporate trust, especially if you have, a special situation, a special needs child, grandchild, who's going to be inheriting the money. And that's something we can do. We can partner with you with, Schwab's corporate trustee department, and really just make sure there's a third party corporation managing the estate to make sure, make sure the distribution is stayed within the plan, how you wished it, and really protect the heirs, the beneficiaries. So that's always something to think about too. I said I'll try to keep it within 20. I did not make that mark. I apologize there. I'm getting closer to the wrap up here, but pre-retirement process after the 5 steps, really just meet with your financial advisor. So if that be a Stenger Family Office financial advisor, give us a call. We can help you with that. But this is just something that the process that we've been doing for so long. It's just so important to do. Meet with your advisor, get a plan, meet with your tax and legal team, make sure everything's on one cohesive plan to make sure nothing's, off track. And then of course, meeting with your Social Security and Medicare professionals too after that. But really after all those steps, you go back to the meeting with the advisor, kind of like the quarterback of the plan, make sure everything's tightened up before retirement, so that you're good to go when you eventually pull the trigger. I mentioned this, there is a survey at the very end here. Please fill it out, give us feedback. Love to hear from you on that front. You can always request our BP guidebook that we have, our 2023 edition. In there is a survey if you want to see how you're really stacked up against your peers. That's in there. But just wanted to finish out here with taking the next step. Schedule a one-on-one meeting with myself or a next Stenger, my business partner, and we can really help you out getting that next step, getting a plan together. No cost, no obligation meeting. And then, really what you should do either with us or with someone else is just get started before retirement. So, you don't have to give, all your funds to someone on day 1 of retirement, but just get started with something small, as little as $1,000. Some folks start with much more than that, but our true minimum is $1,000 investment account to start our official relationship and kind of help walk through the retirement steps with you, that process, the 5-step process we walk through today for BP folks. And then of course, at the very end of that, we'll just give you a nice little customized advice for the ESIP plan. That's just so important. We've seen over the years, folks invested too much in fixed income, too much in international stocks, and we really want to make sure you're just in a customized approach according to your plan. So appreciate you guys who were attended today. Really appreciate that. Take the next step. Give us a call. You have my information right there. You can always look us up online, www.stengerfamilyoffice.com.